Hello, that wasn't good. Hello, world. Welcome to the 167th climate change emergency protest here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I'm staying in the car for this broadcast because it is blowing probably 25 miles an hour, and that'll just get into the microphone and not make it good. This is number 167, and next week is obviously number 168. That'll be on February 24th, 2022. So, Russia, the USA and Russia are standoffish or standing against each other or face to face with each other in the Ukraine area, which is totally ridiculous. I said this earlier in the previous broadcast. In the era of climate change and this era of extinction we're heading into, we're in the sixth mass extinction. It's just ridiculous that these two forces can't figure things out. These two opposing countries. So, anyways, as long as they see each other as opposing, then we're never going to get anything done with climate change. And I'm not blaming Russia at all. I see their point, and I see the USA's point, and I see NATO and everyone else. But there is a middle ground, and I said that last week, what that was. Anyways, so Russia wants climate change to happen. Right now, they have the frozen tundra of Siberia with many minerals, and also the Arctic. They want to see that melt because then they can access the oil underneath and do whatever they want to do and use it as a transportation route. It's crazy that they do want this climate change, because what will happen is, and they're looking forward to it, but a melting Siberia, permafrost, whether it's thawing or melting, however you want to term it, has some issues with it. There are viruses and bacteria there that are over 1,000 years old, 10,000 years old, or 1,000,000 years old, and humans have no ability to fight it off. It's a devastating, dangerous situation we're running into on many levels. Anything permafrost, when it collapses, if you have houses on it or roads or airports or pipelines, they're going to collapse as well. The permafrost is several feet thick up to hundreds of feet thick. So it's crazy to build on top of it and look forward to that, because let's say you're drilling an oil well, well, then it collapses 100 feet underneath, then you got a giant oil spill. So it's just an insane attitude, what they have going on now and what they're banking on. The risk you also run into are those giant methane explosive holes that we see, as well as the basic thawing of the permafrost. So 1/3 of all swamps are in Russia. So that's pretty important, because what you're having is the potential of, and this happens as permafrost melts and there's more rain than snow. You have thermokarst lakes and swamps. They can melt down through into the permafrost and vent off methane. Massive amounts of peat fires are going to occur with the melting of the permafrost and the thawing out and the dehydration of the swamps and everything. Eventually it becomes good grassland, but everything's going to catch fire because the level of peat is very, very thick. You also run the risk of taiga forest fires, hot rivers, because 1 year, 2 years ago, it was 100 degrees in Siberia. So that river heats up and then it goes into the Arctic and causes melting. And the danger of that is when the Arctic Ocean starts warming up, you got a lot of methane underneath the surface there, as well as clathrates that are trapped pockets of methane, and they will vent off to the atmosphere. They say there's 2 times the amount of carbon stored in the permafrost as opposed to what is in the atmosphere already. I believe it is much higher than that. They always underestimate what's going on. Why the fear about methane? Well, methane in the first 2 years is 162 times more potent than is carbon dioxide as far as the greenhouse gas goes. Then after 2 to 20 years, it drops down to 80 times more potent. And then after 20 years to 100 years, it's somewhere around 20 times more potent as greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide. So it has the potential of doubling the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which will just push us off the edge even more so, and quick, within 6 months if that stuff starts venting off to the atmosphere, which it is slowly. But if it does it in one big group, like a 50 gigaton burst, we're in big trouble. So right now we have several leaders that are emerging, throughout the world, and they're doing wrong-headed stuff. I mean, you can be totalitarian and still have a thought about anything but the economy. But right now, President Xi of China has said that we're going to up our coal usage and electric production, and that's the world's fault too, because we keep buying all this crap and then throwing it away. So, but President Xi of China is going the wrong way with his coal attitude, and I understand it, but you cannot do that in this era of climate change. So you have Putin in Russia, who's wanting climate change. Then you have Bolsonaro in the Amazon, Brazil, who wants to destroy the Amazon rainforest and use all the wood and turn it into farmland. Well, the butterfly effect is the Amazon are the lungs of the world, as is the Congo region of Africa. So you start burning that down, which both places that's happening, or tearing it down, then you got a real problem. And then the fourth level of corruption and going on of the big powers, the ones that are the biggest contributors to climate change, is the USA government. It doesn't matter which party is in charge, whether it's Democrat or Republican. We're seeing that, as I stated previously, with the present administration and previous ones, as to the policies they're enacting, and I don't see a difference between the two. How dare you say that? Do a reality check, quit being in dogma, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, and see what your party's doing. That means you can change them from within, but right now people aren't willing to do that. They're not willing to protest, not willing to say anything, because all their friends will just ostracize them because they're speaking out against the one party that represents them, supposedly, which it does not. So it doesn't matter which president's in charge, which Congress is in charge. They're all about drilling and giving off leases to the drilling companies and the fossil fuel companies. You have subsidies going to the fossil fuel industry authorized through Congress and the presidents. But what they're failing to do is they say they're locked into some of these previous presidents' agreements and things like that. That's been the latest excuse of this administration for the previous administration. And they're saying they're locked in. Their hands are tied. They can't do anything about it. You know what? You say no. You say no to someone, and then you take them to court, and you cite climate change as the reason, as a main defense as to why you're not going to authorize this anymore. Countries of the world and people of the world need to start filing court cases and saying that climate change is a crime against humanity by these policies that these previous four groups that I mentioned are enacting. And not only a crime against humanity, it's also a crime against all life on Earth, present life and all future life. So, right now we have heating oceans. The oceans hold over 90% of all the heat that has been vented in the atmosphere. They absorb it. And for a while, that'll work for now, and it has been. But what's going to happen is that it gets hotter and hotter. The oceans get hotter and hotter. Hot water can hold less gases. Oxygen level will drop precipitously as the oceans continue to heat up. And then also, one of the things that people don't talk about, the oceans are absorbing tons and tons of carbon dioxide from our atmosphere. Eventually, it will no longer hold that level of carbon dioxide due to the heating of the oceans. And instead of being a carbon sink, they become a giant carbon emitter. The El Nino event is due to come around again. Right now we're stuck in La Nina, which kind of puts a cap on the heating of the oceans and the venting of the oceans with the heat. But once the El Nino comes, the ocean's going to let loose with a massive amount of heat. The more years that go on without doing so is like an earthquake about to occur, because the plates have not slipped in the last 500 years or something or other. So El Nino is going to be massive, and it's going to be a huge amount of heat venting off in the atmosphere, and we're going to have a lot of trouble because there will be feedback loops off of that. Another thing people don't talk about are sunspots. I go into Soho Sun, SOHO, and type in sun, and brings up this group, government group. And right now you go into the sun and look at it, and there are sunspots starting to occur. So that means the sun is going through an active phase. It's going to have some brightening. Even a 1% brightening can be devastating for our planet, the way we're going with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas. So the United Nations seems to think 1.5 degree increase from 1880 is A-OK. Well, it's not, because we're seeing all these effects with a 1.2 degree increase in our temperatures. Now, if we go to 2 degrees, which is another guardrail, they're saying, I don't see it as a guardrail, it's an exit sign off of a cliff. But in reality, we're baked in for 3 degrees, 4 degrees, 5 degrees, 8 degrees. Things are just going the wrong way. The policies being enacted are going the wrong way, and they're anti-human. You have the Thwaites Glacier down in West Antarctica, which represents 2 feet of sea level rise. They're saying it's going to crack and fall into the ocean. Some of it will in the next 1 to 5 years. So we have that to look forward to, as well as the Ross Ice Sheet. Now, West Antarctica itself represents 10 feet of sea level rise. So if that happened, that would be devastating for the world's ports and capitals and main cities that are on the ports, on the ocean itself. In 2011, now this is 11 years ago, there were 415 dead zones in the ocean. Who knows how many are there now. Also, with a heating environment, we run a risk of plate tectonic shifts. With glacier melt and that weight being transferred into the oceans, that could cause massive amount of plate tectonic shifts, which leads to volcanoes. West Antarctica, for example, has 138 volcanoes. They don't even know how many are in total in all of Antarctica. A volcano in Antarctica doesn't even need to erupt to be devastating. It can just warm up and cause massive glacier melt, which will cause sea level rise. So just heating alone is enough for a volcano to cause massive problems. Now, also due to glaciers melting in Antarctica, you run the risk of pressure being reduced on the volcanoes itself. So you're looking at a potential eruption down there. No one talks about that as well, so feel free to put that in your pocket. A hotter atmosphere causes more water vapor in the atmosphere, which can lead to giant deluges of rain. So something that was like a 1 in 10 year event ends up being a 1 in 500,000 year event when it just dumps rain everywhere. And that was Houston back in whatever year that was, 5 years ago. So you have a shredded jet stream because the Arctic is melting and the ice is melting, and the world's weather and wind are not functioning the way they used to. If you go into Earth Knoll School, you can go into there and see the jet stream at different altitudes and how it's meandering all over the place. That was never normal. You had polar jet, you had a tropical jet, and you could pretty well count on the weather and everything else. But now the weather's all over the place. Here it's going to be 60-some. It was 60-some degrees yesterday, and now it's dropped down into the 40s for the high, and who knows if we'll get snow or not. So with a heating environment and atmosphere, you run the risk of blue ocean event in the Arctic, especially where there's tons and tons of methane. Now, I really question whether there's tons and tons of methane also in the Antarctic, because there used to be trees down there. So think about that. So a blue ocean event is even more devastating for the Arctic because it even further destabilizes the jet stream, and the main center of cold then shifts over to Greenland, which it is doing now. Underneath the Arctic Ocean are methane cloud rates and tons of methane. And it's really a problem as far as I stated earlier, about methane in the atmosphere and the greenhouse gas potential. The big one, which was the Pliocene, that was 3 million years ago. The Earth was 3 degrees hotter, and the oceans were 114 feet higher. Now, that was only with the CO2 level being 350 parts per million to 400 parts per million. Right now, our CO2, carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere is 420 parts per million, even though it almost went up to 422 the other day. So what I'm saying is that we've got all these temperature increases and higher oceans baked into the system, and it won't alleviate, it won't stop. It's going to just keep getting warmer and warmer, and this idea of 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees Celsius is absolutely ridiculous, because they're not taking action on it. They're just pie in the sky, and they're not serious about what's happening. So when it goes to as high as the Pliocene era, you're looking at 114 feet of sea level rise. Well, why is that important? Well, these towns will go underwater at 114 degrees. Here's the list. And this is just some of them. This just gives you an idea. Tokyo, Melbourne, Australia, Cancun, Mexico, Montreal, Canada, Paris, London, some of Rome, Tel Aviv, Shanghai, all going underwater at 114 feet, which is locked in. Shanghai, Rio, Beirut, Lagos, San Francisco, Savannah, Georgia, Philadelphia, Wilmington, Delaware, Virginia Beach, Miami, Florida, Corpus Christi, Texas, New Orleans, Seattle, New York City, Brooklyn, the White House, and also the Capitol will all go underwater with the amount of sea level rise we've made. So go on your little visits and go visit them and as soon as West Antarctica starts to break loose, then it will cause other situations to occur of glacier melt. So go visit while you can, okay? Enjoy it. What we need to do, and the governments need, the worlds need to do, is end subsidies to the fossil fuel industry, and you'll know they're serious when they start doing that. Until then, it's just a lost cause. Just like President Xi of China is basically backing coal there, and it's just going to get worse and worse as far as the carbon dioxide level, and things are ramping out of control, and I suspect this summer 2022 will hopefully be a wake-up call for everybody. So what can you do? Get out and protest. Do these protests like I do every week. Stand on the corner. Today it's too windy. The wind would have gotten in the microphone, so I'll have to do this separately, 2 separate events here. Also, you need to educate yourself. If you think you know everything about climate change, which I never suppose I do, because things are changing all the time, is to educate yourself. There's various forums on here. I'll talk about that in a minute as to how to educate yourself. Vote only for politicians that are fully versed in climate change, and use that as their main talking point, nothing else. No war, no economy. You start talking economy, then they're not serious about climate change. If you vote the same, you keep getting the same, or even worse. People change, people become more corrupted, and these people that are in office right now around the world are only getting worse and worse. And they see no reason to not get worse because everyone keeps voting them into office. You make them pay for it. Yes, your party's going to lose. So what? You got very little time left the way things are going to get on this situation. So what can you do now? You can go down this webpage here on Facebook. You can also, I have tons of information about climate change on there every day. I post articles. Also on YouTube, I have all my Facebook postings, or most of them, as far as the videos. They're kind of informative if you can hang in there. Also, I've been posting on Rumble as well for videos. But if you want to learn about climate change itself, I suggest you go down this webpage on Facebook. Also, the following on YouTube: Environmental Coffee House, Peter Carter, great scientist, Roger Hallam, really great in England, Guy McPherson, and Paul Beckwith. If you watch all their videos, you can become fully versed in climate change, and you will become a climate change expert too. This is, what is this, my 9th year talking about it or posting about climate change on Facebook. So it's been a long time. So it takes a while to learn, but once you learn everything, then you can actually look people in the eye and think things while they're talking about, the Kardashians or something like that. And you can think, oh my God, what's going on here? Please, someone do something. But in reality, no one's going to do anything, even though you have all this knowledge now, and I don't know what you're going to do with it. But we need people like you to get online and start doing protests and start talking online here about what's going on and talking to your friends and family. So I'll catch you next week. That'll be February 25th. That'll be number 168. See you later. Bye.